I stopped by St. Margaret's Hospital to drop off flowers for my former colleague who'd just had surgery. The parking lot was slick with rain, and I was fumbling with my umbrella when I saw him. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no, that was definitely my son Jake pushing a wheelchair through the downpour, wearing a custodial uniform that hung loose on his frame. Jake. My boy who had a master's degree in accounting. Jake, who'd worked at Morrison & Associates for 6 years. Jake, who drove a silver Honda Accord he'd finally paid off last spring. Jake? I called out, hurrying toward him. He looked up, and the expression on his face stopped me cold. It wasn't surprise or happiness. It was fear. Pure, undiluted fear. "Mom," he said, his voice barely audible over the rain. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing, sweetheart." "What's going on? Where's your car? Why are you die?" I gestured at his uniform, not even knowing how to finish that sentence. "I'm just helping out," he said quickly. Too quickly. Melissa needed the Accord today. Her Civic's in the shop. That made sense, I supposed. Except Jake looked like he'd lost 20 pounds. His cheekbones jutted out sharply, and there were dark circles under his eyes that I'd never seen before. The uniform hung on him like he was a child playing dress-up. "Jake, when's the last time you—" "I have to get back inside, Mom. My break's almost over." He started to wheel the empty chair toward the hospital entrance. "Break? You work here now?" "Just part-time. Extra money." "We're fine, Mom. Really. I'll call you later, okay?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. My son, who used to tell me everything, who'd called me crying when his college girlfriend broke up with him, who'd asked my advice on proposing to Melissa 4 years ago, he wouldn't even look at me. That's when I saw it. The silver Honda Accord. His car, pulling into the parking lot with someone else behind the wheel. A young man I'd never seen before. And in the passenger seat, laughing at something on her phone, was my daughter-in-law, Melissa. The car pulled into a spot near the entrance. Melissa got out, wearing designer jeans and a leather jacket I knew cost at least $500. The young man followed, and she looped her arm through his. "Melissa!" I called out. She turned, and for just a second, I saw annoyance flash across her face. Then she smiled, that perfect smile she always gave me. "Donna! What a surprise! What brings you here?" "I could ask you the same thing. Isn't that Jake's car?" "Oh, yeah. Mine's in the shop, and Jake said I could borrow his. He's so sweet like that." She squeezed the arm of the young man next to her. "This is my cousin Kyle. He's visiting from Oregon." "Kyle, this is Jake's mom." Kyle gave me a lazy smile. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Patterson." "Patterson Reeves," I corrected automatically. I'd kept my maiden name hyphenated. I didn't know Jake was working here. "Working here?" Melissa laughed. "Oh, you saw him in that uniform? He's just covering for a friend who called in sick. Jake's always doing favors for people. Anyway, we have to run. Kyle needs to pick up some prescriptions, and then we're meeting some people for lunch." They walked off, leaving me standing in the rain, my flowers forgotten. Something was wrong. Every instinct I'd honed over 30 years as a school counselor was screaming at me. I waited in my car. 45 minutes later, Jake emerged from the hospital. He was still in that janitor's uniform, hunched against the cold, waiting at the bus stop. The bus stop. My son, who had a perfectly good car, was taking the bus. I pulled up beside him. "Get in." "Mom, I told you I'm fine." "Jake Michael Patterson, get in this car right now." He hesitated, then climbed in. Up close, he looked even worse. His hands were chapped and raw, and there was a bruise on his wrist, partially hidden by his sleeve. "Talk to me," I said gently. "There's nothing to talk about." His voice cracked. "Everything's fine." "Sweetheart, you're taking the bus in December. You've lost so much weight your wedding ring doesn't even fit anymore. And you're working as a janitor when you have an accounting degree. That's not fine." Tears welled up in his eyes. "I can't, Mom. If I say anything, she'll stop himself." "She'll what?" He shook his head, wiping his eyes roughly. "Nothing. Can you just take me home?" The address he gave me wasn't the house I remembered. It wasn't the modest 3-bedroom in Riverside Park that they'd bought 2 years ago with help from his savings. "I thought you lived on Oak Street?" We moved. The apartment building was in a rough part of town, the kind of place with bars on the ground floor windows. Jake used his key on a door marked 2C. "Where's Lily?" I asked, following him inside. "My granddaughter should be in first grade right now. Melissa's mom has her today." The apartment was sparse. A futon, a small TV, minimal kitchen supplies. Nothing like the fully furnished home they'd had. "Jake, what happened to your house?" "We sold it." "Why?" Melissa said it made sense financially. He wouldn't look at me. "Listen, Mom, I really appreciate the ride, but I need to shower and get to my night job." "Night job? You have another job?" "I stock shelves at Save Mart from 6 to midnight." He grabbed a towel from a small bathroom. "It's good money." "Jake, you're working 2 jobs? What about Morrison and Associates?" Finally, he looked at me. Really looked at me. His eyes were hollow. "I don't work there anymore." "What? Why?" "I quit. Last month." "You loved that job. You were up for partner." "Yeah, well, things change." His voice was flat. Dead. "I need to get ready for work, Mom." I left, but I didn't go home. I sat in my car for a long time, thinking about the son I'd just seen, the boy who'd graduated summa cum laude, the young man who'd been so proud to buy his first house, the father who'd cried when Lily was born. That wasn't my Jake anymore. That was a shell. I pulled out my phone and called my brother Tom. He'd retired from the police force 3 years ago, but he still had connections. "Tom, I need a favor." By the end of the week, I had information that made my blood run cold. The house on Oak Street hadn't been sold. It had been foreclosed on 6 months ago. But before that, it had been refinanced twice in the past 18 months, pulling out all the equity Jake had built up. The signatures on the refinancing documents looked like Jake's, but according to Tom's handwriting expert friend, they were forgeries. Jake's Honda Accord was registered in Melissa's name now. The title had been transferred 8 months ago. His $401 had been cashed out early, incurring massive penalties, over $60,000, gone. His savings account, which had held nearly $40,000 when he'd gotten married, was empty. Morrison and Associates hadn't fired Jake. He'd stopped showing up for work. When they'd called his emergency contact Melissa, she'd told them he was dealing with mental health issues and asked them not to contact him directly. I dug deeper. Melissa's cousin Kyle wasn't visiting from Oregon. He'd been living in an apartment in downtown Riverside for the past year. An apartment Jake was paying for, according to the lease I managed to obtain through Tom's contacts. I also found something else. Photos. Lots of them. Kyle and Melissa, at restaurants, at clubs, on shopping trips, all time-stamped to days when Jake would have been working one of his 2 jobs. But the worst discovery came when I drove by Jake's old house on Oak Street one afternoon. A for rent sign was in the yard. I called the number, pretending to be interested in renting. "Oh yes, lovely 3-bedroom, the property manager said. "We've had it listed for a few months now." The previous owner defaulted on the mortgage, but everything's been cleaned up and repaired. "How much is the rent?" $1,800 a month. "Has anyone been living there recently?" "Actually, yes. We have a gentleman who's been renting it month to month for the past 4 months. Very quiet tenant. 4 months. Jake had been homeless for 6 months. Someone had been collecting rent on his house. I asked Tom to dig into property management companies in the area. It took 3 days, but he found it. A company called Riverside Property Solutions. The owner, Kyle Henderson, Melissa's cousin. He'd been renting out Jake's foreclosed house and pocketing the money. I needed evidence, real evidence, and I needed to know why Jake was so terrified. I started following them, Melissa and Kyle. They were careless, probably because they thought Jake was too broken to fight back. I watched them have expensive dinners at restaurants Jake and I used to go to for special occasions. I photographed them loading shopping bags into Jake's car bags from stores that sold items worth hundreds of dollars each. One Thursday afternoon, I followed Kyle to a dealership. He test drove a BMW. The salesman was showing him financing options when I saw him pull out a pay stub. I took pictures through the showroom window. The pay stub was from Morrison and Associates. Jake's pay stub. They were using his employment information to apply for loans, even though he didn't work there anymore. That evening, I confronted Jake at the hospital. I waited until his shift ended and cornered him before he could get to the bus stop. "I know everything," I told him. His face went white. "Mom, please. The house, the car. You're 401. The apartment Kyle's living in that you're paying for. The rent being collected on your old house. All of it. He started crying. Not quiet tears, but gut-wrenching sobs. She said if I told anyone, she'd say I was abusive. She'd say I was unstable. She'd get full custody of Lily and I'd never see her again. She said everyone would believe her over me. I held my son while he fell apart in a hospital parking lot. She said I'm the reason we lost the house, he choked out. She said it was my fault, that I'd made bad investments without telling her. But I didn't, Mom. I didn't do anything. She forged my signature. She took everything. And when I tried to push back, he pulled up his sleeve, showing me a series of bruises in various stages of healing. She started hurting me. And when that didn't work, Kyle would. They said if I went to the police, they'd hurt Lily. My hands were shaking. Where is Lily right now? With Melissa's mom. She always has her on weekdays now. Melissa said, I'm not responsible enough to take care of her. Fresh tears streamed down his face. I only get to see her on Sunday afternoons, and only if Melissa's there. She monitors every conversation. If I say the wrong thing, she cuts the visit short. Jake, this is kidnapping. This is fraud. This is my life, he shouted, then quieter. I can't lose my daughter, she's all I have left. I looked at my broken son, and I made a decision. You're not going to lose her, but you need to trust me. Can you do that? He nodded weakly. Good. First, we're getting you to a doctor. You're malnourished and exhausted. Then we're going to document everything, every bruise, every hour you've worked, every penny that's been stolen. Over the next 2 weeks, I built a case. A real case. I hired a private investigator who specialized in financial crimes. His name was Robert Shaw, a former forensic accountant who'd worked with the FBI. I hired an attorney, Patricia Morrison from Morrison & Associates, ironically, the same firm Jake used to work for. She specialized in family law and financial fraud. I gathered medical records documenting Jake's weight loss, malnutrition, and injuries. I collected bank statements, forged documents, and photographs. I recorded conversations. Georgia is a one-party consent state, which meant I could legally record conversations I was part of. And on a cold Tuesday morning in January, we struck. Patricia filed for emergency custody on Jake's behalf, presenting evidence of parental alienation, custodial interference, and child endangerment. Robert Shaw filed a police report documenting fraud, forgery, and identity theft. I picked up Lily from school. I was on the approved guardian list and brought her to Patricia's office, where a child psychologist was waiting. Gently, carefully, the psychologist talked to Lily about her home life. What Lily described broke my heart. She rarely saw her father anymore. When she asked about him, her mother said he was sick and dangerous. She'd heard her mother and Kyle talking about teaching Jake a lesson. She'd seen Kyle push her father once when he'd tried to stand up for himself. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, Melissa and Kyle were arrested at the apartment they'd been sharing. Yes, sharing, as my PI had discovered with photographic evidence paid for with money stolen from Jake. The charges were extensive: forgery, fraud, identity theft, domestic battery, financial exploitation, child endangerment through custodial interference. I was at the police station when they brought them in. Melissa looked furious. This is insane! I'm his wife! You can't just arrest me! Actually, ma'am, we can, the officer said. You have the right to remain silent. Kyle tried to run. That went about as well as you'd expect. He got an additional charge of resisting arrest. That evening, I brought Lily to the hotel where Jake was staying. Patricia had advised him to get somewhere safe with documented proof of residence. When Lily saw her father, she ran to him. Daddy! He picked her up, holding her so tight I thought he might never let go. Hi, Pumpkin. Hi. I've missed you so much. Mommy said you were sick. Are you better now? Yeah, baby. I'm getting better. And I'm not going anywhere. Over the next few months, everything unraveled for Melissa and Kyle. The evidence was overwhelming. The forged signatures on the refinancing documents, the fraudulent use of Jake's employment information, the bank records showing systematic financial abuse, the medical documentation of physical abuse, the testimony from Lily's psychologist about parental alienation. Kyle's property management scheme fell apart when investigators found he'd been collecting rent on a house he didn't own and had no legal right to rent out. Their attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal. Patricia shot it down. "Your client systematically destroyed my client's life," she told them in a pre-trial hearing I attended. "They forged his signature, stole over $100,000 from him, physically abused him, and kept him from his daughter through threats and intimidation. The DA's office has agreed with me that this requires prosecution to the fullest extent." They both eventually pled guilty to avoid trial. Melissa got 3 to 7 years. Kyle got 5 to 10, given his prior record, something else the investigation had uncovered. They were also ordered to pay full restitution, though Patricia warned us we'd probably never see most of that money. "They spent it all," she said. "Trips, clothes, cars, that apartment. They lived like they were millionaires on your son's dime." But Jake didn't seem to care about the money. He had his daughter back. He had full custody with a restraining order in place. Morrison and associates rehired him after Patricia explained the situation to the senior partners. They'd known Jake for years and were horrified to learn what had happened. They even helped him petition to have the early 401k withdrawal penalties reversed, citing financial abuse. It took time. Jake started therapy, both individual and with Lily. He put on weight, slowly. The hollow look in his eyes began to fade. We sold the apartment Kyle had been living in. Turns out Jake's name was actually on the lease, though he'd never signed it. More evidence of forgery. The money from that helped Jake make a down payment on a new house, a smaller one, but it was his, truly his this time. 6 months after that day in the hospital parking lot, I stopped by Jake's new place for Sunday dinner. It was a tradition we'd started. Every Sunday, I'd come over, and we'd cook together while Lily helped by stealing bites of food and telling us about school. "Grandma, I got a gold star on my spelling test," Lily announced, proudly showing me a paper covered in careful 6-year-old handwriting. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Jake was making his famous spaghetti, my recipe, actually, but he'd perfected it over the years. He looked healthier, not quite back to his old self, but getting there. "Hey, Mom," he said, stirring the sauce. "Yeah? Thank you." His voice was thick. "For not giving up on me, for believing me, for saving us." I hugged him, this son I'd almost lost. "That's what mothers do, sweetheart. We fight for our kids. Always." Lily tugged on my sleeve. "Grandma, can we have garlic bread too?" "Of course we can, Pumpkin. Your dad, go get the bread from the freezer." As I watched Jake and Lily work together in their small but warm kitchen, I thought about how close I'd come to losing him. If I hadn't stopped at that hospital, if I hadn't trusted my instincts, if I hadn't fought back, but I did. And he was here, rebuilding his life, brick by brick. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed and Jake walked me to my car, he said something that stuck with me. "You know what the worst part was? It wasn't the money or even the physical stuff. It was feeling like I'd disappeared. Like I didn't matter anymore. Like I was just this thing they could use and control, and nobody would notice or care." "I noticed," I said. "I cared." "I know." He smiled, a real smile. The first real smile I'd seen from him in months. "That's why we're still here." I drove home that night thinking about all the people out there who might be going through what Jake went through, who might feel invisible, trapped, afraid to ask for help. And I thought about the importance of paying attention. Really paying attention to the people we love. Not just accepting their "I'm fine" at face value, but looking deeper, seeing the signs. Because sometimes, the people we love are drowning right in front of us, and they're too scared or too ashamed to call for help. But if we're watching closely enough, if we trust our instincts, if we refuse to look away, we can throw them a lifeline. That's what family does. We see each other, we fight for each other, and we never, ever give up. Even when it feels impossible. Even when they've been taught not to hope. Even when the people hurting them have tried to make them disappear. We show up, we pay attention, and we fight like hell to bring them home.